Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Hello and welcome to Tech Insights, and we're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. And we are so glad and excited that you have decided to join us. We have a great broadcast in store for us today to learn more about technology. And give me 1 second and let me get started. There we go. All right, there we go. And this is Tech Insight broadcast hosted by yours truly, Brian Cochran on BAC TV. And we're excited to be back again on Tuesday. And we're excited that we have a great lineup for you today, as I said a second ago. This broadcast on Tech Insights will cover, not today, but in general, the theme of our broadcasts are to talk about video, audio production, software solutions, and we'll have interviews from different people that are in the technology space to help us to understand how to use tech and for both our business, our nonprofits, as well as the church. And so that's what we're going to be dealing with today. Let me talk about me just for a second. My name is, again, Brian Cochran, and I've been a techie now for a long time. I started off in audio production, and in the audio production, I was a DJ and a sound guy, and then I started selling and installing and training, and so I have books and resources on different guides on audio and video production, and as well as in internet streaming and online businesses and so forth. And so I've been on an online techie for a long time, and I guess it will be halfway qualified for what we're talking about today. Today, episode number 3 is going to be on the 3 basic ingredients of your live stream setup and dealing with software, hardware, encoders, and dealing with the basics of those. Again, these first several broadcasts are going to be on one-on-one stuff to help you kind of just get started to understand what it is, what it's all about, and then we'll graduate into some harder things once we get to the foundation. I realized a long time ago that I in all I getting an understanding, and I found that a lot of folks were I would be too deep, too fast, and because I've been doing it a long time, it's easy for me to understand and know what I'm talking about. And so I wanted to make sure now that I'm doing this broadcast to slow down a little bit and take our time and deal with some things that will help you to get up and running with your live stream or your video audio production a lot faster, fail forward. Matter of fact, fail less, because we taking my mistakes of what I've done and capitalize on that by what I teach you through the resources that we're making ourselves available to do. So today, this is now understanding how the pieces of a live stream all fit together is rather important, because one of the things I found in the short time that I've been working on video and doing streaming since the early 2000s, and now that it's affordable, it made it a lot more easier to do what we're doing now. So, but it's how it all comes together. Again, because I'm a techie, it's easy for me, but it's difficult for others, and I want to make sure I get you in a place that it's easy for you as well. Because the live stream setup can quickly become complex based upon the need and the expertise. Again, that's why I'm starting with the basics, because if I take you deeper, then you may get discouraged or get discouraged and not do it, or buy the wrong equipment, go in the wrong direction. A little bird's eye view for me. And one of the things that I know for me, what I want to talk about today or as a whole is that if I can help you save money, then there's more money for you to market, promote, and build whatever it is your brand is, or be more successful. Because again, one of the things that you'll hear me say over and over again is that everything in technology, it has a starting point. I really give you the starting point, so that way you have the foundation. And if from that foundation you can grow and be as big as you want to be based upon you have a solid foundation. All right, so let's continue. At its core, live streaming isn't so scary. It isn't. It's just three basic ingredients, which we're going to talk about today, and then tie that into what we're the basics of. If you remember, or if you haven't tuned in before, we have episodes 1 and 2. One was the understanding what streaming is and what kind of cameras. Last week we talked about your streaming device, your actually how you connect from your camera to your computer, and having a capture card and the different type of capture cards. And today I want to get into, now that you got those two taken care of, I'm giving you a progression. So now that you got those two taken care of, the next step is how do you stream it? What do you stream it with? What do you stream it through? So we're going to talk about that. So we have three basic ingredients that we're going to talk about today. Number one is the sources. Number two, which we've talked about before, but we'll also just briefly go back over it again. Number two, encoder. We'll talk about what that is. And number three, destinations. And the three basic ones, again, are sources. And you see the graph here. I put the graph here on purpose so that way as we go through, you'll see the graph go through complete. So we're starting with number one with sources. All right. Number one ingredient is sources. The first ingredient to our live streaming is sources. And generally, there are three sources we need to consider. And we're only going to talk about two of them today. The third was not necessarily as important. As you see here, you'll see on the first part of the bullet of sources, there's camcorders, cameras, and then microphones, and then presentation software. So we'll talk about the three. Number one is video or footage coming from a webcam, camera, multicam, even multiple cameras, which we won't get into today. I want to more delve into the concept of what we're doing today is basically getting you just from the very beginning when we started last week. So you may have a webcam, you may have a DSL camera, or you may be using a video camera of some kind. The next step is, once you identify that, you're also audio portion wise, and we'll go into a separate video with the audio because that's there's a bunch of different factors with that, but just the basics of what we're talking about today is streaming. Streaming audio comes from a microphone or from a sound card, soundboard, or mixer, or some type of audio interface, which is also part of that audio portion that comes into. So I'll say this one part. Matter of fact, let me show you on this one real quick. So on this camera here, it has XLR. This is a prosumer camera, which we talked about a lot before. It has XLRs, and so what happens is the microphones will sit here on the cold shoe, and either be external camera, which I didn't bring any today to show you because it wasn't important about what we're doing. More importantly, just the connection, what you're gonna need. And then what happens is it's the HDMI out. So through the HDMI, both the audio and the video goes through the feed to connect to your computer or to your capture card, and then it's converted into USB to connect into your computer. So I just wanted to make sure I tell you that so that we understand that that's kind of what we're talking about. There's a couple different ways of doing it. Probably next week we'll get into audio and how that works, the basics of it, then we'll get into the deeper stuff as we go along. And number three, it would come from a presentation software like ProPresenter or PowerPoint. So your graphics will come through those. And so your graphics would be your lower thirds. If you're in a church, you would do your Bible, your lyrics, your Bible verses. And if you're doing a regular PowerPoint, it would be your bullet points, just like I'm doing now, are all fed through just like we're doing today. And you see it today, and I'll put it back up so you can see it. So that's basically what this is. I'm using PowerPoint today. I do have ProPresenter, but I'm using PowerPoint because, I want to kind of make sure I start you with the basics. Most of us have PowerPoint, so we can use PowerPoint or some type of presentation software like that. It could be on a Mac. It could be this resource that they have, or Linux. They have one too. So you don't have to have PowerPoint by Windows, but you can use any software that allow you to do so. That is a way to bring it into the system for you to be able to show it like I'm doing today. All right. So our first ingredient is sources. So it could be microphones, it could be cameras, it could be your software presentation software. I mean your PowerPoint or your whatever you want to do for the lower thirds, as well as for information that you want to put up on the screen, just like I'm doing right now. Number 2 is encoder. And if you look at the graph, your whatever the sources that you're using will go into an encoder. So that way, let's talk about what an encoder is. It's a simple live stream. It takes all the sources that you send its way and compress them into a neat and compact format to easily share online. So what happens is that most cameras will be large, as well as the files are extremely large, as well as your audio, as well as your whatever presentation software you're using. So what this does is it takes all this and compresses it down, so that way, if you're going to YouTube, if you're going to Facebook, if you're going to Periscope while they're still around, or if you're going to Instagram, it takes it and compresses it, so that way it'll stream neat and compact for you to be able to do it. You don't have to do it yourself. It's automatically done, depending on, we'll get into more details about that, but that's the basis of what an encoder does, so that way you know that it's that you need one. And let's keep going. Now, why is it important? Simply stated, because the volume of data, which I said a second ago, that is coming from your sources is a lot, and it needs to be compressed. And H.264 is probably the most common. What happens is video is converted into from to MP4, and then MP4 that's compressed down. Because what happens is just raw data compressed. Because what happens is when MP4 is compressed, and then it compresses again. So that way, because like for instance, if you're going to YouTube, you can do a 4K or 1080p signal, and it will do just fine. But if you're on Facebook or Instagram, it compresses it down to 720, and so you need something that will convert it down to help you to do so. So that way, it doesn't get all shoddy and look real bad. It does it in a format that you will be able to stream what you're looking to stream and do it in a very cost-effective way. Consider this. Have you ever had exported a video using your computer before? It is an intensive process, and rendering takes a long while. I know that DaVinci Resolve, or if you're using iMovie or whatever, if you've ever done that before, it takes this big old huge file that's massive, and it compresses it down, so that way on any telephone, smartphone, or any device can watch it. So it converts it down and compresses it into what we use now as MP4. Amen. And so what it does is it takes all these raw data, your audio, your digital, and your video, and it all comes into something that you don't use it. And with live streaming, it is all that needs to happen all at one time in real time. So the encoder is the engine that makes it all happen. Something that you all need. And so I just wanted to make sure we went through that, because again, it's a techie show, and it's real technical, but it's real simple, because a lot of your services will already have them, but you need to know it just in case, to understand that there's some things that you need to know as you're getting ready to, based upon the kind of cameras you're going to use, based upon your computer you're going to have, all those things come into play when you get ready to do your streaming. All right. There are two types of encoders that you need to know about. The number one is software encoders, and number two, hardware encoders. Let's start with hardware encoders. This is a physical piece of equipment that you can connect your sources into using wired connections, and those are always the best connections, which are hardwired connections. But again, because I was just talking to someone today, and they want to go wireless, and I'm like telling them the challenges with wireless, and so you always want to try to do hardwired connections when you're connecting your cameras to your encoder, your cameras to your computer. You try to always want to make sure, this is a little side tip or pro tip, that you want to make sure it's a hardwired connection too. All right, if you look at the graph here, it shows your source. So it could be, again, your cameras, your video camera, it could be your microphone, it could be your presentation software. It all goes into what is called an encoder. If you look at the little box on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that there's a box there that's called an encoder. There's tons of companies that have them, external ones, that everything plugs into that, and then it goes to from there, it goes into your destination, which we'll talk about in a little bit, so we get past this section. If you look at the bottom left, you'll see a laptop, and then you'll see some other stuff. Down there's something called a hardware switcher that has an encoder in it. And so it does the encoding for you. Everything plugs into the switcher, and then the switcher does the encoder, and the encoder goes to your destinations based upon where you're trying to go. So that's the basics of what an encoder does. So if you see it there, everything plugs into the encoder, and we'll keep going from there. If you look at how this works, and I'm going to, make sure I put this graph here so that way you kind of understand how it works. So you're going to do a live event, or if it's a Sunday worship service, or some type of presentation that you're going to do online. So your cameras feed to you capture the information from your live event to your camera. Your camera goes into the encoder. The encoder goes into a streaming service of some kind, and then it's streamed out to your viewing audience through their devices. If it's a smartphone, it's a flat screen or tablet or your Apple TV or whatever, that's where it goes. So that's the basics of how that works. Physical encoders are great because they are reliable and they don't require your computer's processing power. So let me park there just for a second. Can I put it on here? Let me go back. Oops. I'm sorry. Yeah. So let me park here just for a second. Part of the challenge of streaming is the low cost of entry, but at the same time, the more professional you want to be, and the more taxing or the better equipment you're going to have is going to take more processing power from your computer. The cool part about the encoder, the external encoder, the bad part about it is it's an extra expense. But if you buy a switcher that has it in it, then you're going to buy a switcher anyway because you're going to do multiple cameras someday. Then a switcher has the encoder in it, so it does the processing for you. Otherwise, you might have to beef up your computer, look at its processor, so that way it'll be able to handle both that and streaming at the same time. So that's something to consider as you're deciding what you want to do as far as on your streaming when you get ready to start streaming. So again, a software encoder, if you look here, it goes from same concept, but if you look at the left, it goes into some type of software that also has encoding in it. So like that's a picture of vMix right there, which is a very popular Windows only software that's available that also does encoding through the software, but it also uses your CPU on your computer. So with vMix, it's considered a professional software. And with that professional software, you're going to need to have a beefed up computer that's going to handle it. So that way it doesn't bog down and then lag or not work correctly because it's asking the computer to do more than it's been created to do. So you're going to create a beefier software to do it. But the cool part about it is that the switching and everything are all in the software through your computer. So if you have a nice computer, if you want to build up a computer, then going that route is a good route as well. It's more cost effective than buying an external, but at the same time, it may be more based upon if you not have the right computer, you got to buy the right computer in order to do so. The software encoder is a program that you can download on your computer. You plug your sources into the computer and the encoder goes to work and does the work for you. These are some of the services that are available that are out there that already have encoders in them. So all you have to do is just link to them through the process of their setup guides and their RTMP, and which we'll get into another time. And then it does the work behind the hood. Probably the most popular ones are Facebook, of course, Facebook Live and YouTube, where they're the starters of all this, and all these other came along after them. So they're the basics of the beginning of. If you're just getting started, more than likely you're going to go to Facebook or YouTube. And then we'll get into multiple destinations, that kind of stuff another time. But these are the destinations. So I'll put this all here. And we'll talk about destinations in a minute as well. Software encoders are nice because they don't need to buy an extra piece of gear. So it's wonderful. It's awesome only if you have a computer that can handle the processing. So when you get ready to do it, you look at the software, go to your, look on the hardware, on the qualifications of your hardware, specifications of your hardware, to make sure you can it'll handle it. That may make you decide to go through either get a switcher. Like I use switchers. When I first started, I started with a program called OBS, and OBS has an encoder in it, and it's a free software that got me started. But as I started to grow and more demanding, I ended up going with a hardware switcher because of just some of the other things that I needed power-wise. That instead of I ended up buying another computer as well. But to get me started, I use OBS, and so now I'm using something called ATEM Mini Pro and ATEM Mini Pro Extreme, because it does a lot more under the hood. It also has a software portion too that's incredible. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you. That the good part about the software encoder, if you're just getting started, you can use something like OBS, which I mentioned earlier, and OBS is free. So that'll get you up and going, and then as you grow, and then it has tons of plugins and stuff that you can do multiple destinations, lower thirds, and all kind of stuff in that software for absolutely free. But it is based upon, again, your computers. I'm saying this over and over again because I've had people who have bought, have got services through us, or we recommended services, and then their computer was a, 2004 computer, and wondering why it wasn't working right. And it's because the computer's too old and didn't have the processing power to be able to handle it. So the first part is, if you see here, number 3 is I've already agreed, is destinations. Again, this is a very basic course today. Number 1 is the sources, which is your cameras, your audio, and your presentation software. And then it goes into your encoder. And then the next part is, if you have an external or internal, it goes to the destinations. And if you look here, the destinations can be Facebook, YouTube, or even your own website as far as the destination. And then we can get into in another video. We'll get into, there's services available like Restream, for instance, that will allow you to go to 10, 20, 30 different destinations if you choose to, by syndicating that feed, by taking it in because it's digital, and then spreading it out over as many destinations as the service that you purchase. And the missing piece of the puzzle, and I've always forgotten about this, and I get asked the same question, is your internet connection. And that's going to be real key to your success of your broadcasting being stable, because if you have a lousy internet service, then more than likely it's not going to be fast enough. If your upload speed is low, then you need to beef up your upload service. And let's talk about that right now. Whenever possible, use that too. Always use an Ethernet connection for your live stream setup. Just like now, I'm probably 10 feet away from a Wi-Fi, but I've had problems 10 feet away where for whatever reason, let me say it this way. We use Spectrum because we can't use Fios, and I have a home office. And so in my home office, I'm on Spectrum. Well, guess what? Because in my neighborhood, we can't get Fios. We have we don't have no competition. So Spectrum, what they do is it's a shared account, even though it's our own personal account, but through the station, is that one signal goes out, split up to 200-300 houses, and guess what? As more people get on, the slower the service is, and more of a chance for it to glitch, to buffer. But if you have a hardwire, if you're doing just especially specifically for streaming, you want to go with a hardwire. Wi-Fi is easier, but wireless always have hiccups. And so I'm telling you now, as a savings from what I've gone through, that try to if you can, if it's just temporary, or say for like what I did for a while, is I had to have Spectrum come back out and run the router into my house, because our condo is a little older, so we can't go through the walls, and the way some places can, because it's older established home. So it was in another room, and so I had to have them come back out. But what I did temporarily was ran an Ethernet cord across the floor with a carpet down, and so while I'm broadcasting, I would use it. And then when I got done, it was just doing regular work, that I would go ahead and unplug it and just go wireless, because I didn't need to have the connection for it to be steady as I would if I was doing a live broadcast. So you might want to just a little tip, please try to make sure you try to, if you can, if possible, do hardwire. Pro tip, ensure your internet speed is at least 35 to 40% higher than your bit rate you intend to stream out. And what is a bit rate? I'm glad you asked. For example, if you are streaming at 3,000 kilobits per second, you'd want your internet connection to read north of 4,000 kilobits per second of upload speed at least. And so you might want to double it if possible, because the more you have, because again, it comes back to, even on your own service, if another telephone, another smartphone come on, another computer come on, if you're using Roku or Fire Stick or Apple TV, that all takes up kilobits. and so it slows down your speed. It takes up some of your speed, so it's not 3,000 just for you. It's shared. So just make sure when you're doing your stream to be mindful of that, and you can talk to your service provider about all that, and they'll help you figure out the best plan for you. But just be mindful that you can start where you're starting, and if it starts to buffer, then you need to buffer. You need to bring it up if you want to do the calculations. That's a bit, it's an easy way to do it. They have something called speedtest.net, and you go there and you can test the speed of your wireless as well as your as well as your Ethernet to know how fast it is. And if you need to get more, then you go ahead and get more. But that's a pro tip for today, because I want to make sure we added that in because I hadn't talked about it before. In conclusion, based upon your budget, based upon your expertise and how you're going to use it, is the type of encoder that you're going to purchase or get. Again, if you look on the left, you can use software or you can get a switcher which also has an encoder or a separate encoder. You can also, based upon your expertise and what the goals and vision, and I'm going to combine the next two, expertise and usage, based upon those two things is how you want to go. When I first got started, I didn't know anything. So I had a webcam when I first got started. I showed you the webcam that I used before. If you haven't seen that video, go to cameras, and that it'll show you the different cameras that I started with. But as I grew and got an understanding of how all this works, then I got into buying more expensive pieces of equipment because this is part of my profession. This is I live a life of online, and I'm an online. We have our own online TV network, and so we're able to. I needed more professional equipment in order to do so. But when I first started, my budget wouldn't. Well, I didn't know what to buy, to be honest. So I with the webcam it was easy because I used, as I said earlier, I was on a Mac, so I used this free program called CamTwist, and CamTwist was a great little program that I used to help me get started. It gave me where I could put multiple cameras. So as I grew, I think I shared with you before, my first camera that I purchased outside my little webcam was a Vixius RF 800, and that allowed me to stream. I was able to save some money and use that, and then I grew from there. But as I grew, then I knew that I needed a better encoder, I needed a better switcher, which we'll get into next week, and so the rest is history. So for you, make sure you have the budget to do what you're doing. Start off where you can get started, and then from there, when you grow, then you invest in better equipment, and that should help you to get started from what we're doing today. I've written a book. As a matter of fact, it's funny because it's my #1 bestseller. It's called The Startup Guide to Internet Broadcasting. It's written by yours truly, Brian Cochran. It's available on Amazon and on our website, briancochran.org. And so if you want to pick up the book, it goes into more detail about what I'm talking about. It breaks down a whole lot more step-by-step for you to be able to get up and running. I'm giving you great overviews and step-by-step with his individual videos that we're doing to help you get started. But I go into more details about the different software, different companies, and that kind of stuff to help you get up and running. So if you're looking for a solution to do so, or you can contract us to come out to help you with it. I want to thank you so much for being a part of our broadcast today. This is episode number 3, hosted by yours truly, Brian Cochran. We're here every Tuesday. I'll probably be doing some more episodes because I got a lot more stuff to talk about. I want to do audio and some audio production stuff as well. That is not included in the streaming part. That I'm going to start doing that as well, so that we can help. I do a lot of church installs, a lot of training, and I also have a book on a startup guide to church sound and video and lighting and that kind of stuff. And so I want to start helping folks doing this by giving some tips on how to get up and running, how to troubleshoot and so forth. But anyway, our company is FatX. It's Pro Sound Lighting and Video, an AV company. We do sales, training, and service. It's our pleasure to serve you. So if you need help in your video production, audio production, feel free. My contact information's on the bottom. And we are glad that you attended our broadcast for today. Don't forget to share, and please share and like our broadcast. And if you want more, in the comment section below, I'll go back and take a look in the comment section below. Put in your comments of did you learn something, did you get something? If there's more things you want me to teach, I'll gladly do it because this is my gift and my anointing to do it. And I think we're done. So we will see you next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. God bless. Bye-bye.